A lot happened in 2022. The Astros won the World Series, Russia invaded Ukraine, the pandemic ended, and oh yeah, the Tempest Knives Pinion released. Now, this knife was not a knife that I checked out immediately after it dropped. I did not get in on the pre-order, but it's here now, thanks to Matt Russell, channel member, supporter, longtime viewer. Thank you to Matt for lending me this knife so that I could check it out. Now, we have already reviewed this knife, and my regular review/overview will be linked up there. However, we've had it long enough now where we can actually put some context to the opinion. It's another episode of Grail or Garbage, the series where I systematically and categorically rank knives like this Tempest Pinion to give you the context that you need to decide, does it deserve a spot in your pocket? Does it deserve a spot in your EDC rotation? Here's how it works. Grail or Garbage consists of 5 categories. Those categories are materials, ergonomics, fidget factor, the lock, and fit and finish. Each category is worth a max of up to 10 points. And after we're done ranking each category and scoring each category, we will add up all the points and then put it on our public leaderboard, which looks like this. By the time we're done, we'll finally know. Is the Tempest Knives Pinion a Grail, or is it garbage? So what do you think? Is it time that we go ahead and rank the Tempest Pinion? I think so. I've had enough time to hang on to this knife and to hold it and to carry it and to cut with it, and it just deserves a spot on the leaderboard. Let's go ahead and get into it. The first category is materials. Now, materials is not just what it's made out of. It's also weighed against how much it costs. How available is it? Because it doesn't matter how much it costs if it's sold out everywhere, and it doesn't matter, you know, what it's made out of if it just costs too much. Well, first and foremost, this costs $82, and you can get it on tempestknives.com. And I'll go ahead and link it in the pinned comment as well as in the description. And so if you want to pick up one of these, you know, feel free to use one of those links. They won't be affiliate links. They're just regular links. And no, I don't have a discount code, at least not yet. The materials are G10, and this is kind of a polished G10. It almost has this wood grain look to it, and it feels good. The G10 on here feels nice. It's not the grippy type of G10 that you're used to from Spyderco's, but it feels premium. The blade steel is a 14C28N, and then of course it does have inset steel liners and then a wire pocket clip. Yeah, we'll get into that. For this price point, 14C28N is great. I've seen a lot of knives at this price point with, you know, D2, and it's really refreshing to see more and more sub $100 knives with 14C. Sandvik 14C is a Swedish steel, and it's a very well-rounded steel. And trust me, if you pick this up, you will probably want to carry it every day. For all of those reasons, the price is good, the materials are decent. It's going to be getting a 7 out of 10. Next up, we have ergonomics. How does it feel in the hand? Can you switch up the grip? Does it make sense? Does it tell you where to put your fingers? You know what? Honestly, it feels great. The ergos on here are phenomenal. It's not the best, but it's definitely up there. It doesn't have a full-fledged finger cutout or finger groove, but it kind of has this half finger groove, which says, yeah, you know what, you could choke up. And if you do choke up, the swell of the spine actually kind of creates a nice locked in stance, even if there is no jimping. And I know that is purposeful. It's not an oversight. They purposefully didn't put jimping there. And some people will say you need it. Some people will say you don't. I would prefer it, but in this case, I'm really not mad about it. I think that ultimately it's pretty dang good the way that it is. You can do a reverse grip on here. Reverse grip feels just as comfortable. Saber grip feels quite natural. And then of course you could do the pinch grip with no problem whatsoever. The ergos are really decent, and for that reason they are going to be getting an 8 out of 10. Next up is one of my favorite categories, if not my favorite category, and that is Fidget Factor. And before you say,
oh, I mean, it's got one deployment option. How well can I do in Fidget Factor?
Listen, Fidget Factor has more to do with the quality aspects. We're talking how crisp is the detent. We're talking how smooth is the action. How much do you want to play with it? And believe it or not, that has not a lot to do with how many deployment options it has. It has one, well, I guess you could call it two deployment options. You can thumb flick it. You can reverse flick it. You've got this deep deployment hole that ends in a inset fuller, and that's sweet. The detent itself is really crispy, and so the moment it breaks detent, it's coming out, and that's nice. It's actually really hard to fail this one, no matter whether you're thumb flicking it or reverse flicking it. It's going to work rather well. And because of the ease and the clickiness of that detent, it does make it rather fun to play with. The action is a single-sided captive pivot running on ceramic bearings, and it feels really good. Is it drop shut? Not completely. It takes a tiny bit of encouragement, but it is extremely smooth. Very, very smooth. I really enjoy the action on this knife, and it's one of its highlights, I would say. So for those reasons, it's going to be getting a 7 out of 10 for Fidget Factor. Next up, we have the lock, and you know what? It's a liner lock, but it's an inset liner lock, and a lot of people really like that. Personally, I don't care as much about whether it's inset or shadow boxed, as long as it works well and it has good lockup. Well, let's check out that lockup. The lockup on there is a hefty 50%, but it has a lot to do with the thickness of that lock bar, as well as the thinness of that blade stock. So the lockup is really good. There is absolutely no blade play, no lock rock to speak of. It's very solid, and there is plenty of access to that lock bar. That's all fine and dandy. Now, the one thing that I'm not a huge fan of on this lock specifically is that there is no chamfering on the inside of that lock bar. And while that's not necessarily a huge hot spot, you know, it is somewhat knocked down. It does feel like one of the sharper edges on a knife that's otherwise very well rounded out. I would have liked to have seen some kind of chamfering or milling to maybe even just knock down that edge. If it had been crowned, it would have been fantastic, but it wasn't. And I do think that that is something that should be addressed. If there's ever a pinion part 2 or second design, I would love to see that lock bar get some love and also take our fingers into consideration, because while it's not super uncomfortable, it's also not super comfortable. And this being a very fidget friendly knife, you're going to be opening and closing it a lot. And even if it's just your EDC knife, you're still going to be opening and closing it a lot. And so that's something that I think would really take it to the next level. However, it is still a liner lock, and despite how good it locks up, I'm not terribly impressed with liner locks in general. And so for that reason, it scores okay. It's going to be getting a 6 out of 10. So now it's time for the very last category, and we're talking fit and finish. Fit and finish is the design elements as well as how well it was made. Well, let's talk about how well it was made. Everything feels nicely finished. Everything comes together really nicely. There's no extra sharp edges that shouldn't be sharp. And when I say sharp edges, I don't mean that hard edge right there on the lock bar. I mean, you know, things that are legitimately sharp that shouldn't be. So with that in mind, the manufacturing feels top notch. And I do believe that this was manufactured by Kubi. The blade is actually a really cool design, and this is where we talk about the design language. I don't know what to call this blade shape, and it almost seems to be mocking people that care about what blade shapes are designated as what. It's kind of a sheep's foot reverse Tonso Warncliffe thing. And in pictures, the initial pictures that I saw of this on release, I wasn't terribly impressed with it. But after having it in hand, I can tell you that I really like it. I think that this blade shape is perfect for utility cuts and for just about any type of cutting task you can think of. That's phenomenal. The amalgamation of that blade is just ridiculous. At the end of the day, it's going to get the job done. It's going to get the job done well. I like the dedication to the deployment hole. I've polled the community before, and reverse flick seems to be one of the most popular, if not the most popular way for the knife community to deploy their knife. And, you know, even if you're not a big fan of reverse flicking, you can still thumb flick and it works really well. I enjoy the fact that these edges on that deployment hole and fuller are nicely knocked down, and so that feels very premium. While I'm not a huge fan of wire clips, and I've made that known in the past, it's not bad because I don't ever think about it. You'll notice that I haven't mentioned it up until this point because it hasn't really been worth mentioning. It doesn't stick out as a hot spot. It fits in and out of the pocket well. You know, I won't call it super comfortable, but it's also not uncomfortable, and it is in fact reversible for those of you who want to go lefty. Now, if you do not like wire clips and you're like me, great news is you can go over to Lynch Northwest and get a wire clip replacement and get a titanium stamp clip. I put one on my left Avant and I love it. You can also go to Rip's Garage Tech and get a 3D milled wire clip replacement that will also work, and I think that would also look pretty cool on this knife. I think the 3D milled would definitely be the way to go. So I can live with that pocket clip. If I bought one of these, I would definitely replace the pocket clip, but if you don't care, you don't care, and it's not getting in the way. Ultimately, I love the fact that Casey over at Knives Fast / Tempest Knives was willing to take risks. Risks like only having one dedicated deployment option. Risks like coming up with a blade shape that doesn't look like anything else out there on the market. That's cool. It takes guts to do these kind of things because there's money on the line, and it takes courage because knowing that your design could flop is always something that would keep you up at night. So huge shout out to Casey, aka Knives Fast, who runs Tempest Knives, because this knife is phenomenal and it shows just how good you can do if you put your mind to it and you think about the things that really matter to the people, to the knife community at large. Again, I'm going to list this in the description down below, but guys, for fit and finish, this is going to be getting an 8 out of 10. So let's go ahead and add up the scores. For materials, it was a 7. For ergonomics, it was an 8. Fidget Factor was a 7. The lock was a 6. And fit and finish was an 8. If you add up all of those scores, you get a total of 36, which puts this in our high recommend category right next to knives like the benchmade Ergonomics and the bestech Nixie. But you let me know. Do you agree with the score? Do you think it should have gone higher? Do you think it should have gone lower? Let me know in the comment section down below. And guys, if you watch this far and you're not already, make sure you smash that subscribe button, ring the bell while you're at it. Other than that, I'm Rollshambo. I'll catch you on the flip side.